This episode contains strong language and discussion about eating disorders, including anorexia, which some viewers may find distressing. The information shared in this episode is based on personal research and experience. If you've been affected by the themes in this video, remember you're not alone and support is available. Please check the links in the description for help.
Most of my hate comments online have been from men, like statistically. And so from a very early age, I really internalized that and was like, right, so all men and all boys must think this. Therefore, I literally could never even look a boy in the eyes. Like, I was so intimidated by them because I was like, you think this? I can't, I felt like everyone thought that. Therefore, I'm just too scared to ever put myself out there. Like, I've never believed someone would like me unless they say, I like you, out their mouth.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hello.
Come.
Outfit.
Thank you.
I got the boobs.
I tried to coordinate with you a little bit.
No, I love it.
Thank you so much for being here and for recording this. We had to have you. It wouldn't be the same without you.
Stop.
We're going to get into all the incredible stuff that you have done.
Yeah.
But I feel like we should rewind a little bit.
Sure.
For anyone watching who doesn't know you, I don't know how they wouldn't know you, but who doesn't know you, can you share your story? Because I think you were 6 years old, right?
Yeah.
When your journey kind of started?
Yeah, so I was born with a condition called AVM, or arteriovenous malformation, but it was kind of dormant till I was 6 years old. So the right side of my face looked exactly like the left side. Parents and me knew no different. Lived a very normal life as a child, super outgoing, super chatty. And then when I was 6 years old, some veins started appearing on the right side of my face and swelling, and we kind of had no idea what was going on. So I went to the doctor and got referred to another doctor, and after lots of scans, I was told I had an AVM. So an AVM is basically a blood vessel disorder, so you can have it in any part of your body. Mine in my face affects 3 in a million, so it's very rare. And it's basically a genetic fault when you're, being developed. And basically all over your body, you have arteries, capillaries, and veins. And when you have an AVM, you don't have the capillaries between your arteries and veins kind of balancing them out, because one's high flow, one's low flow. So it means they directly collide into each other and cause like a tangle and swelling. And so because of that, I have obviously swelling on my face and veins. And the worst part about my condition is you can have life-threatening bleeding because of the build-up of pressure. So I've had 98 operations at this point. For a lot of my life, especially when I was younger, we used to call hospital my second home. When my parents changed, it was really difficult to come to terms with, and I felt completely out of control.
Mm-hmm.
When I was told the diagnosis, obviously I was so young, it's really crazy. I look at 6-year-olds now and I'm like, God, you're tiny. You're so innocent. And I then kind of think about that I was that person, that tiny person whose life just flipped upside down in an instant, and my innocence was taken away. I felt like I had no control or connection to the outside world around me. So I found YouTube and watching YouTube videos, and that was kind of like my outlet to escape into other people's lives, forget about my own. I'd sit in my hospital bed and watch videos, and that was me kind of finding solace in everything I was going through and the hardship and my appearance changing. And I'd watch a lot of makeup tutorials because I loved makeup, and I kind of fell into sort of playing around with makeup. I feel like using makeup forced me to address my appearance changing and look in the mirror, because when it first kind of began to change, I remember I went into because I didn't understand what was going on, I went into the bathroom, got a flannel and started wiping my face, because I was like, surely this isn't my reality. It all felt so surreal, and I thought it was a cold that would go away because I was so unaware of what was going on, so young still. And then obviously as my appearance continued to change, I was so aware that, well, no, this was my reality now, and life as I knew it was not how it was going to be. And so, yeah, one day I hit record on our iPad and just played with makeup, and I asked my parents if I'd be allowed to create a YouTube channel and post it, not for anything, just for myself to have something to do, because my life was nothing but operations, doctors, nosebleeds, pain. That was my life. And so it was just something else completely not related to my condition and what I was going through.
Was it 10 years old that you did your first YouTube video?
8
years old.
And so initially my parents were a bit nervous at first. Obviously it's the internet, we know what can come with it. So they allowed me to create it if comments were off at the beginning. So I would just post whenever I wanted, and it became a way for me to express myself, escape into it, and find new hobbies. And I think it kind of saved me in the sense that I feel like I developed and understood what I was going through a lot more quickly and absorbed it in a way that I don't think I would have been able to accept had I not had something like that, like an outlet. So that's kind of my story. And I think what's been really special about it is, although I share like makeup and fashion and my hobbies, I also want my page and everything I do to be nuanced and not about like, oh, sunshine and rainbows, because life isn't that. And I think there's so much on social media about it being a highlights reel of achievements and happiness and things like that, and life is not like that. And so for me, I also do come with me to have a surgery, me sharing having a bad day, because that is the majority of my life too. That's like the 90% of the 10% where I do these cool things.
And you share things in such a way that is so authentic and is so nuanced. And I feel like for a lot of people who talk about chronic illness or disability, first of all, you don't know how people are going to react.
Totally.
But I imagine it's quite hard to find the balance of like what's private, what are you going to share. And you said that you had the comments off at first. When you turned them back on, what was that like?
It was crazy, because I think it like then felt like, oh my God, people are actually watching this. Like, because for a long time, it literally just felt like my little bubble, my little world. Like, I'm posting this to no one. I didn't even look at the views. I was so like blissfully unaware. So it made it feel real. Like, oh my God, this is a person. Like, this view is a person. And, you know, some of the comments I did get were hate comments, obviously, putting yourself on the internet. But I remember one distinctive comment I got, one of the first comments, which was a woman had cancer and she said she hadn't left her house for 2 years because she felt so underconfident. She'd lost all her hair and she just felt like life, like what was the point of it? And she said after watching some of my videos of me just doing my makeup, like I wasn't even preaching about anything, like or doing anything extraordinary, she left the house for the first time. And I think it's stuff like that where you're like, wow, this is why I do this, you know, like in spite of the hate comments, in spite of the horrible people online, when you get stuff like that, that is like, wow, I'm impacting this person in a way I could never have expected or anticipated. And I think that from a young age is what I was like, wow, like in spite of the negative comments, which of course affected me because I was so young, you know, in comparison to how they affect me now, that was like a lesson in like, will you do this for those people then, you know?
Well, yeah, because you are the representation for so many people, and particularly people with AVM. I mean, I'm guessing when you were growing up and you looked around you for representation,
none.
There was no one.
No one. That's what I talk about a lot, is that if you don't see yourself in anything, whether it's a person or a celebrity or a public figure, whatever it is, you don't believe that's possible. Even like, say you want to be a lawyer, if you don't see a lawyer that has a visible difference or whatever condition you may have, you don't believe that then that is something that can happen and is realised. And growing up, I think that's almost maybe why I also turned to YouTube making videos, is because it was the world in which I existed and was represented and created myself. I never saw myself in Barbies or toys. I never saw myself in TV shows on TV, movies, you know, musicians, nothing. Therefore, like, who's to say that I was like wanted in the world and accepted and a part of it? You know, I constantly felt like a black sheep and an outsider in the world. I still kind of do. I've internalized that quite a lot. But I think the more you see difference, the more normalized it becomes. And I think it's so important to just, I think that's what I want to do with all of my platforms, is showing that, like, of course I talk about my condition because it's a huge part of my life. It affects me 24/7, but it's the least interesting thing about me. And like, everyone is human. Everyone deserves the same rights and wants, and, you know, inclusion as anyone. And as my bio on TikTok and on Instagram is, I look different, but I'm the same as you. And I think that is so true. Like, it is. We are all human in spite of our backgrounds, cultures, looks, conditions, whatever it may be. We all want the same things in life. But for me, all I want to do is just be what I didn't have when I was younger, for whoever that is.
So I grew up with a disabled sister. My sister has cerebral palsy.
Oh yeah, I've seen your sister.
Gemma, legend.
Yeah, amazing.
I have so many memories of growing up with her, just being in public and people not knowing how to react, respond, staring.
Insane.
Yeah. Like how are young people not being taught that people are different?
Yeah. I feel like it's, in society, massive thing is, unless it affects you, you don't care. Like, you'll just stay naive to it. And then when it affects you, you're like, what the hell? But like, when it's not an issue affecting you, you just don't really care to learn about it or educate yourself or do better.
Right.
And I think especially from an early age, what was most insane to me is when adults would stare. because you're like, well, you really should know better.
How did you cope with that growing up?
I became a recluse. Like, I never left my house because I felt like a monster. I felt like such like a outsider. I also feel like it's even in pop culture that is created. Most villains, like 90% of villains in film, have a visible condition or something, whether it's a scar or an augmentation, something. From even in films from an early age, child films, that I think that can even create in a child's head like a preconception because they can't like separate the two.
Definitely.
So I think it's even that, and I found it so difficult that I was like, I'd rather just not leave the house than put myself in the situation. And even now, like, I will avoid school rush hour. I will avoid like going in places where I think there'll be a lot of children because I don't want to be stared at. And it's that same thing. I retreat to my like 6-year-old self that went through that. And I think it was even harder for like my siblings and my mum and my dad, who would be with me in public and notice it and notice how uncomfortable then that made me. And even now, I've internalized that so much that if I'm in public in an area where I don't feel comfortable, I will pretend I'm scratching my head just to cover my eye. Like, I do that a lot. And that's something that I've massively internalized, like from being younger, as like a coping mechanism. Even though someone may not even be looking at me, but I'm just so hyper aware that I'll just kind of do this until I'm in a less busy area. One nice thing now is that a lot of people will recognize me because of who I am, not because of how I look, which has been a really nice redefining. But at the same time, I still get stared at for my appearance. I still get children whispering to their parents. And one distinctive experience I had was I was actually in a hospital going to an appointment, and we were getting into a lift, me, my mum and my dad, and there was like a boy probably about like 10 years old with his mum. And he said to his mum like out loud, like, "Mum, I'm scared of her. Can we, get out the lift?" And she was like, instead of using that as a moment of education, because obviously that would have made me uncomfortable, she said, "Don't worry, we'll be out of the lift soon."
Oh, that makes me like viscerally angry.
And that was at a hospital. And then the mum had the audacity to come and say, "He's also dealt with comments." And I was like, so you should know better. Like, I was actually like furious because I was like, well, then you should know better.
So in that kind of situation, what is the response that would make you feel the most comfortable, do you think?
Probably an apology. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that, and I have had that too. Like, I'm so sorry, and sometimes parents will then be like, "I'm so sorry," and then speak to their child and say, like, "What are you looking at? Like, there's no issue here." Or like use that as a moment of education. So it's not all like bleak.
Yeah.
But when you have those experiences where like a child is kind of like whispering to their parent and they're just kind of shrugging it off like it's nothing, trivializing it, or like a mum is almost consoling their child rather than like being like, "No, that's not okay." They're just as anyone else, using that as a moment of education. I'm like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, why is this also not something that you've taught your child from like day dot?
Yeah. But like you said, hopefully then these days they can go home
That's
and like
it.
see someone, watch someone.
Normalized.
Yeah.
That's it. We always talk about how the more you see difference, the more normal it becomes. And that's just what it is in society. It just needs to be the same, whether it's like who brands choose to use in their campaigns or what actors are on TV. That all makes a difference,
I feel like you and I, we have some similarities in our relationship with our body.
Yeah.
So as you know, like I grew up very much struggling with my body image. I went to a school that was like majority white kids and I was the only mixed race one, and I thought I'm bigger than everyone here.
Yeah.
And I started dieting when I was really young, maybe like 9 or 10 years old. And that spiraled into anorexia by the time I was 14.
Yeah.
Took me a very long time to heal and get out of that and feel like my body was home and like mine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I feel like you've had some kind of similar experiences.
Definitely. I mean, I think my whole life I felt incredibly out of control of my body. Everything that was happening to me was not in my control. I've had 98 operations since I was 6, and none of that's been in my control. I've signed consent forms kind of giving away my body to someone else, saying like risk of death, like all of these scary things at the age of like 9 years old. I was signing these forms that my body kind of just felt like a thing on a bed, like it didn't feel mine. And I've dealt with a lot of kind of like dissociation growing up because it just felt like I was kind of like outside of my body. I mean, I think that's also like a trauma thing, but like because it felt like my body was never mine, I just felt like I was kind of in this thing that wasn't mine. Like I never felt connected to it because I've got a huge scar on my leg scar on my neck, like everywhere. And all of those things have not been in my control. Therefore, I've just felt like my body was never mine, because it was never a yes or no, do you want this? It was, you have to. That I kind of just accepted that, like, my appearance was going to be what it was going to be. I could never control that, you know. Every day, you know, after I had a huge 12-hour surgery, like, I was, you know, recovering for 4.5 months, and it felt like the longest 4.5 months of my life, where my scars just weren't healing, and I felt so out of control of my body that, like, you know, I think I've always resorted to not very healthy other coping mechanisms to gain control, because nothing's been in my control, whether it's having life-threatening bleeds or an operation or pain or whatever it is. It's never been a choice. And so at the age of around 11, I became anorexic, and it kind of started with like orthorexia, where like I kind of was like, oh, I love, you know, I want to eat healthy all the time. And then I became anorexic, where I was just obsessed with my weight. I was so young, and I think initially I was like, oh, I've not got an issue. Like, you know, I think initially you're in a lot of denial. You're like, oh, this is normal. But then I think I realized it was like a tangible thing that I could kind of measure. I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I'm not eating. But then my mind is so consumed with the idea of food. It was so crazy. And like, I'd planned my whole day around like what I wouldn't eat. And I wasn't sure if it was an eating disorder. I just knew it probably was not normal. And so I was seeing a therapist at the time for just health stuff, kind of coping with it. And I was like, I think I've got a problem. Then I got referred to a dietitian, which was quite traumatic. But like, you know, then they said like, you've got anorexia. And I found the recovery of that very difficult, because again, it felt like I was giving over control. And, you know, I would, cry most sessions, because it just felt like I was almost annoyed with myself that I'd said it, because I was like, well, now you've given control to someone else and it's out of your hands. But I just couldn't deal with that anymore. And I'm glad that I said I had an issue from an early age, because I think it made it easier to recover.
Definitely.
Even now, though, I still have problems. Like if I eat a burger, I feel a bit like
a fear food.
Yeah, I feel a bit like gross after. But I'm able to like override it. Like, I'm a foodie, I love food, and I felt like that got taken away because I was just so obsessed with trying to control my appearance, because that's something that it was like, I did this, it was mine.
I mean, by that time, right, you've been going through surgeries since you were 6. You've then gone through an eating disorder. How did that leave you feeling in yourself? And also, when did that start to get better?
Yeah, I think it started to get better. I was going to therapy for my eating disorder every week. Like, I was referred to a clinic. And I mean, it got so bad, they were like, we might have to like admit you. And I was like, that can't happen. I already have enough issues with my health. And I also didn't want to put my parents through that. You know, we were going through enough already with everything I was going through. And so I kind of was like, okay, I had to just commit to this. And so I think I had like 8 months of sessions, like every week. Most of it was just talking therapy. I think that's what I needed mainly. And just someone to understand and hear it, and not be like, why can't you just eat? Because I think that's the thing, is with an eating disorder, unless you have one, it is so impossible to understand. You're like, what? Like, just eat. Like, you look fine, you know, don't understand it. And so for me, it was just kind of like trying to override that. And so I think it's a real process. You can't just suddenly then just be like eating fear foods and gaining a ton of weight, because that's like the worst way you could try and recover. So for me, it was just like little steps. But I think after about a year, I felt like I was more, the devil had shrunk and the angel was a bit, you know, the angel was a bit clearer. But it was definitely difficult, and that is still in me. Like, those thoughts are still in me, but it's like you can override them now rather than them controlling your whole existence. It was really difficult. I would preach a lot about self-acceptance and self-love, but I didn't really feel it. Like, I never really accepted who I was and my appearance. And I would even like zoom in on photos of myself just on this side to be like, oh, this is what it would look like if it was both sides. Like, I'm still very aware of that. And there's days where I'm like, oh, I'd give up everything to just look how I did before I was diagnosed, because that's still in me. I think you almost mourn your body and yourself before these traumas happen. And I feel like I've dealt with that a lot. Like, recently I had to go through some like old family videos, and I was looking at myself obviously before everything had happened, and I was like, God, I was so innocent and so happy, and like my body was so like untouched and mine, but I was so unaware. So I feel like I've kind of mourned my body before the scars and the cuts and the out of controlness.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
I really resonate with a lot of you that you've said. So for me, after I went through recovery, you know, my body changed so much.
Yeah.
And back then I feel like there was much less understanding about eating disorders.
Definitely.
And like medically, every doctor was like, oh, she's fine now. You know, she's recovered.
Yeah.
She's fine. And I was just
Off
like,
you go.
I just went back into the world where I found diet culture, like lack of representation, fat phobia. And I was in this body and I was like, whose is this?
Totally.
Like it didn't even feel like mine. And it wasn't until I found like the world of body positivity and I genuinely started seeing people of all shapes and sizes and learning about why our culture is so obsessed with thinness and with food and, you know, questioning everything.
And why are body types trends?
Don't get me started.
Why is skinny the new thing? Like, what is going on?
Our bodies are not trends.
Yeah.
Like our bodies are our homes.
Totally.
Should feel like that.
Yeah.
And I think I was like, maybe like 23 before I felt like, this body is mine, this body is home, and this body is good enough.
Definitely, yeah.
You know?
That's it. I think we spend our whole life striving for perfection or something more, that we actually don't take a minute to be like, my body's operating how it should. You know, it's looking after me. Like, I'm in this body for a reason. You don't appreciate that. You're just constantly striving for something more. And I think it is so difficult when you're in a body you don't accept. And it's so true that I think when you're done with recovery, you kind of just leave that, and then you're kind of expected to just like go into a world where like there's, you know, numbers on menus and things like that, and you're like, okay, I've just got to kind of deal with this, like nothing's happening, it's not triggering at all.
Right.
And I think that's really, really difficult, especially then when you put yourself on like a public stage. There's even more opportunity of scrutiny or voices from people you don't even know that can add to what you're already thinking or feeling, you know?
Yeah, and you were already on that public stage, like you were already being perceived by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people when you were going through all of this. How did that have an impact?
It was really difficult. Also, I think sometimes, you know, when you're going through like an eating disorder or something, sometimes you get comments that are affirming, like, oh, you look great. And then you're like, well, your eating disorder brain's like, great, I'm doing something well. But actually, no, that's really worrying. And so for me, I get a lot of those kind of comments, which then you're like, okay, I'm doing good, you know, like it's like affirming and validating. So I get a lot of that. But, you know, when I first turned the comments on YouTube, like the hate almost made me want to stop doing YouTube, because at that age I was like, how can people be mean? I didn't understand because I'd been in my bubble. And, you know, I've had comments calling me a monster, like every single comment you could get with hate under the sun. A monster, ugly, I'd do it with a paper bag over her head. This is a reason to use contraception. I'd kill myself if I looked like her. Like, I have had everything you could think of. Obviously, amongst and inundated with the positive comments. But that doesn't mean that then those negative ones, despite them being from strangers that know nothing about you, don't, like, somewhat get absorbed when there's a power in numbers, you know?
Of course. And, like, that is ugly.
Yeah.
Like, they want to talk about appearances, that behavior, those were like, that is pure ugliness.
And cowardly. Like, you would never say that to my face. But I also feel like social media platforms have such a need to, like, a due diligence to make things, you know, stricter when it comes to hate and things like that. Like, it's so badly managed at this point, you know?
You have done so much with your advocacy, raising awareness. Like, I can't even begin to get into how much you've done. But alongside all of that stuff, you were also like a certified fashion.
Oh, stop it.
I see you at the fashion shows. I see you in these looks on these red carpets.
Yeah.
But also I find it interesting because the fashion industry, right, historically has been so exclusionary, like fat phobic, like all of the obias and isms the fashion industry has been.
Yeah.
So what is it like for you, you know, breaking the mold and going into those spaces?
It's not easy. And I'm very aware that if I go to a fashion show, I'll, one, not see anyone on the runway that looks like me. Two, only see one body type. And three, no one else attending the show will look like me. And so therefore you really do feel like you're, I mean, look, I'm so grateful to be in those spaces. I've worked with some incredible brands that support me and what I do and, you know, champion what I do. But I feel like fashion is going nowhere in terms of the people that are in shows. You have some incredible designers that have people in wheelchairs in their shows and have different body types or disabilities and abilities, which I think is incredible, but they are so few and far between. And that's more in London you'll see. Whereas I feel like in other places where there's some more major shows, say Milan, Paris, you see no change from the major brands, and it's so disheartening when you're a fan of a brand yet they're not a fan of like inclusion or anything. And again, it goes back to like, if you don't see yourself in a person wearing these clothes of a brand, then like you can't picture yourself in the clothes with this brand, and like you therefore kind of don't really want to support it and what they do. And it's really difficult because I love fashion and going to fashion shows is really fun. However, like I feel like a black sheep when I'm in that room, and it feels like there is nothing I can do to push that forward because it's something so much bigger than me. Obviously being there is almost advocacy in itself, but because that probably wouldn't have even happened like a few years ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just like, what is going on? Why is there no one else? It's 2025. Why is there no one else here with a facial difference, disability, body type, like nothing? It's so like insane to me. And it then makes you feel very disheartened because you're like, am I actually wanted here?
Right.
And so I have a real bittersweet relationship with the whole fashion industry, because it's the same with even like brands accepting you to go to their shows or accepting you to wear their clothes if they say no, as you know, as they should and as they can. But it almost feels like it's because of how I look rather than like any other reason, and they don't want me to be seen in their clothes. That's kind of how it feels. And there's been so many brands that have been supportive. It's not like I'm like, boo, fashion industry. Like, I'm in it, but I do my bit and I leave. Because if I stayed in it, it would be so toxic and not good mentally. So I go to my shows, I do my little dressing up, I wear the brands that I like and make me feel good, and I leave it, because it's not an industry I want to fully be a part of at this moment in time with what it represents.
I feel like one of the last times I saw you, we got into a bit of a deep chat about dating.
Yes.
Dating
oh my God.
apps.
Yeah.
And you were like starting to explore that as a topic.
Oh my God, yeah.
So what's going on? If you don't mind like sharing.
Yeah, I feel like I have a really, not even love-hate relationship, I have a hate relationship with, I can't even be like, I love it, I don't. With like dating and the dating industry, I just feel like it's so superficial. Every single dating app is superficial. Like, and obviously the first thing a person sees, whether it's on social media or a dating app, is your face, is your appearance. And I feel like that is already like a barrier to entry then for me. No one is saying that I can't go on a dating app. It's my like internalized, like I feel like I can't.
Have you tried them? Okay.
All of my friends have them, and I feel like I live vicariously through them. Like, I'll just like go on the profiles for a bit and be like, okay, I've seen enough. But I feel like with dating, I've always really struggled with it in general. When I was younger, like most of my hate comments online have been from men, like statistically. And so from a very early age, I really internalized that and was like, right, so all men and all boys must think this. Therefore, I literally could never even look a boy in the eyes. Like, I was so intimidated by them because I was like, you think this? I can't, like, you know, I felt like everyone thought that. And so I never had any guy friends growing up, never had any, like, relationships because I, like, was just too scared and, like, had internalized all of this preconception of what they thought. And also at school, you know, I was very aware of, like, how boys would speak about girls and, like, internalized that a lot because it was all superficial stuff. And I was aware I didn't fit that. I grew up never being like the chosen one. I was like, you know, the friend that gets spoken to by a boy about their friend, like, oh, do you know so-and-so single? Do you know if so-and-so likes me?
I know very
well. I was the bridesmaid, the friend, you know?
Yes. I literally, at my school, there was like this trend of kids getting married in secret.
Stop it.
And I was always the priest.
Oh my God, stop it.
Never married, always just the priest.
No, that would literally be me.
Yeah.
That would be me. I'd be the one throwing the petals at the end. Like, just no other thing to do. Yeah, so I feel like it wasn't until like sixth form where I actually kind of started making guy friends, and I was like, wow, not all guys are
assholes.
Pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, no, not everyone is like this. So I think a lot of that's also internalized that I've just grown up with thinking. Therefore, I'm just too scared to ever put myself out there. Like, I've never believed someone would like me unless they say, I like you, out their mouth. Like, you know, when some people are like, oh, I can tell when someone likes me. I can't. Like, unless you say it, I'm not going to believe it, because I've never believed someone likes me because of just how I've grown up and what I've internalized. So in terms of dating, like, it just feels so superficial, and I just feel like it's a world in which people with facial differences can't really exist. Like, 92% of people that have joined dating apps with visible differences have received negative comments from other users. So, like, why would I want to do that? But then I'm like, well, what other option do I have? Like, I just feel like this world is just all about online dating now, that no one's going to be sliding into my DMs tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Like, So I just don't, and I don't go anywhere new. I'm a real like little introvert. I retreat in my shell. So I'm like, I don't really understand. I'm not going to go up to someone and start a conversation, make the first move ever. Don't have the confidence for that. I think dating is just not spoken about enough in how incredibly hard it is if you do not fit the stereotype. And I feel like a lot of this industry is like, I'll go to events and stuff, and I feel like the topic of conversation is always dating life, and like, oh, I'm speaking to this guy or this girl or, you know, whoever it may be. And I'm just like, oh yeah, cool, nice. Like, or experiences where I've been at events and there is guys there, but they're going to go and speak to the girls that are that stereotypical.
Right, yeah.
So I'm just there, sat there like, yeah, not picked once again, you know, like retreating to my school, younger self.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, dating is really, really difficult for people that don't fit that mold. It truly is, you know?
Yeah, and also in terms of body image, for me, especially when I was younger, back before I had kind of found the body positive movement and done a lot of healing, whenever I was dating, it just amplified all of the insecurities.
Oh my God, yes.
Like, I wouldn't want to be touched on my stomach.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to be seen
That's
naked.
so true. I feel like there is something so to be said about, of course, we need to love ourselves before we can like love anyone else or get into a relationship. But there is something so to be said about, you know, validation of someone that you like, or, you know, the opposite sex or whatever it may be, because otherwise you don't believe that it's possible. Like, you don't believe you are desirable. You don't believe you are wanted in that way. And so I think that's it too, is that I've grown up being admired by a lot of people and like you know, a lot of people feel inspired, which amazing. But in that regard, I've never felt like wanted in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like you've done enough work to know that that's not your worth, but that doesn't mean that you can't want it.
That's it. I think people talk a lot about like, oh, you shouldn't let, you know, other people define you. But there's a level of like, well, then how do I know that that is even like possible sort of thing? You've never had it.
So obviously dating apps are a thing. So many people use them. If you were going to consider going back on them, or even just for anyone else out there who uses them, who does have a visible difference, what would you want to say to other users on there? How can people be a bit less judgmental, a bit more kind?
I think, you know, like you said, dating apps are the biggest way people are meeting people in this day and age. You know, people don't really meet people properly in person anymore. And so I think there's no reason why, you know, people like me should not go on dating apps. Everyone deserves to find love. Everyone deserves to have their person. And so I think it's really just all about redefining that just because they look a bit different, you do not know their story. They are just the same as you. They have the same wants as you, the same interests as I do. My condition is the least interesting part about me. And most of my friends and people that see me don't even kind of, obviously it's there, but they don't even like acknowledge it. It's not even kind of a thing they notice. I'm just Nikki. And that is like any person that has a visible difference. They just want to be seen, wanted and accepted. And so I think it's really down to the other people that don't have conditions or differences on the platform to just make them feel accepted and wanted. You know, I think all too often people like me fall through the cracks of society and are ostracized and outcasted. And so dating is just a huge part of life, you know. And so it's just important that it's a place in which we feel that we can have an opportunity. And so it's just not judging a book by its cover. It's understanding that we are the same as you. You don't know anything about a person until you meet them, like anyone in life. And maybe it's being a bit more strategic about what apps in particular you use, because there is some way you get to know a bit more about the person that isn't just swipe left, swipe right, which is just rubbish. So I think maybe it's just being a bit more strategic about which you choose, because there is so many dating apps now online that some may be better than others and a bit more interesting and personal. And so I just think, there is no reason why we shouldn't. Like, I can go on a dating app. There's no one stopping me. It's just everything I've internalized from society. So it's almost the due diligence of people that don't have issues to just make other people on the platform feel accepted and wanted to be there, and having an open mind, you know. Like, too many people these days just have a closed mind or pre-perception of people. So it's just have an open mind. They just want the same things as you. They're no different.
And you know what? Even if you're not attracted to someone, just don't be a dick.
Literally. Exactly. It's not that hard. Like, if anything, it's harder to just be a dick in life. Like, just let them get on with their lives. You get on with your life. Like, and that's the thing as well, as looks fade. Like, looks, okay, maybe initially will draw you to a person, but if they're an ugly person on the inside or a horrible person, that attraction goes from a 10 to a 0 real quick. And then it can be the opposite for someone where you may not initially be attracted to them, but then you learn about them, you learn about their heart, their soul, and you're like, they're funny, or, you know, whatever it may be, they make you feel good, and you're like, wow, like, that is what's going to draw me to a person.
Babes.
That is what you're going to live with for the rest of your life if you're with that person.
Yes.
Looks mean nothing. Like at the end of your life, no one's going to be like, she was so pretty. They're going to be like, she was a kind person, all of those things. And so it's like, people just need to get their priorities straight when it comes to dating, I think.
So you spend so much time in the fashion world, you do a lot of beauty content, you work with beauty brands, and I feel like you're probably surrounded a lot of the time by the beauty ideal, right? That we're all told is like
24/7.
right.
Yeah.
But you yourself personally, what is your idea of beauty at this point in your life?
I love that question. I think for me, I have spent a lot, like anyone has spent a lot of my life trying to chase the beauty standard that I know I can never attain because of my appearance. Like when I was younger, I remember watching videos like, how can I make myself more attractive? Wear red lipstick, wear a nice smelling perfume, like all of those external things, like I kind of like was so obsessed with because I thought, oh, this will make a difference, whether it's, platonic or romantic. But now I'm just at a point where I'm like, there is only one of me, and it's about owning that existence and owning that personality and body I'm in. And that's not to say that it's easy. There's a lot of times I look in the mirror and I'm like, why is just everything so difficult for me? Why can't I just be that beauty standard? Because life is easier when you are the beauty standard. People can argue that, but it is. Pretty privilege is apparent and it is so real. I see it every day when I'm in this beauty industry. Like a lot of brands, especially in beauty's much better than fashion, God. But like, there's beauty brands where I'm so aware that like they'll invite you, for a meeting and then it will go nowhere. But then you'll see this exact same type of person if they were in a lineup being invited to like a big trip or an event or to be in a campaign. Like it's so obvious that I think for me now, beauty is just about owning my identity. I think for a long time, I literally had no identity. Like I was molding myself completely to whatever I thought people wanted me to be or would like me more if I did. Like I was very kind of people serving, people pleasing. I still am a people pleaser, but now I realize that like I need an identity and I need to delve into like what does Nikki like and what makes me happy and who am I and like my feelings and thoughts. And so I feel like now I just am more self-aware, and for me that's beauty, and that's kind of owning your identity and realizing that you do not need to be the same as someone else for them to like you. If anything, it's like our differences that bring us together. That is what makes the world beautiful. Like society would be so dull if every single person looked the same. Like what is there to talk about? What is there to connect on? And so I think my life experience maybe is what I feel makes me beautiful, because it's something that is different. And I think I'm trying to learn to embrace my differences more rather than trying to hide them. Because for a long time, even though I was preaching about like, be you, you're born to be, all of this stuff, of course I believed it, but I didn't believe it myself.
Oh, it's so much easier to say
oh
it
my God,
than to
preach it. Yeah, it's like anything. You give a friend advice and you're like, I wouldn't accept that. It's the same thing. So I feel like I'm slowly like learning to be a friend to myself, because I thought it for so long I was also my biggest internal enemy.
Yeah, you and I both know that body positivity should include everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like all shapes, sizes, shades, genders, abilities, disability, ages, everyone should be included.
100%.
But so often the mainstream conversation about body positivity, it doesn't fall too far from the beauty standard.
No.
There's like an acceptable, and I will call myself out here, like I fall into, I think, what society thinks of as the like acceptable body positivity, because I have a certain amount of privilege in my body. But I think especially when it comes to visible differences and disability, body positivity isn't doing enough.
Not at all. I think we're almost like the least priority in society. I think society loves, and everything loves to put people in boxes, and we don't really fit in that box, because also I think a lot of facial differences are seen through a cosmetic lens and like a temporary problem, and not seen through like a medical lens by like society and like policymakers and things like that. Then it means that it's often trivialized, and they don't understand how it can have such an effect on someone's mental health, on their ability to integrate into society and things like that. And it's a real issue, because it then means that it goes unseen and hidden for so long. And I also feel like facial difference and disability are also kind of quite different things, in the sense that disability is such like a broad spectrum for so many things, whether it's being in a wheelchair or maybe you're blind or, you're deaf. It's such a wide spectrum. Whereas I feel like facial difference is kind of like, it's like a branch of that, where I feel like it's incredibly not accepted. Or it feels like, I've seen magazines and stuff do issues where they include people with other differences, but it almost feels like they've done it once and that's their like quota for the year. And that's what I really hate, is that it feels like, rather than it being like a true embrace of people in that community, it's just like, okay, we've done it, we won't get any flack now because we've done our like inclusivity for the year, the bare minimum, and like that's all we need to do, and onwards and upwards with getting a pretty standard, you know, person on the next magazine cover or whatever it may be, because they think that sells. And so for me, I really do not think that it's included, and I think that's what's the biggest issue, because even in terms of, say, you know, like AI becoming a huge thing, facial recognition is a real big issue where people can't even go through automatic passport gates or use their banking apps if it's like Face ID, because it doesn't recognize them, and therefore it's another reason they don't feel included in society. And so for me, I think the issue is just for too long we've not been acknowledged, we've not been consulted on issues that majorly affect us. And, you know, even in like third world countries, mothers are ostracized if they have children with facial differences, or, you know, children are orphaned because of their parents and so on and so forth, are not able to attend school and get an education. And so it's such a deep-rooted issue. It really, really is, you know, and I feel like it's often just trivialized as just an appearance thing. But it really, like, it goes to the bottom down. And if we're not able to feel like we can fully be in society, then it's like we can't live our life to the fullest, you know? I just feel like nothing is changing personally. Like,
and it's gone backwards, right?
It's gone backwards, and that's what I just do not understand. It's gone backwards in size, it's gone backwards in image. Like, it gets to a point where you're just like, am I speaking to a void? Like, you get tired of saying the same thing, and that's where I'm just like, the only thing that I feel like would be concrete now is if there's policy changes or law changes or legislative changes that actually put things in place that's concrete. Otherwise, like, it does, like, even, you know, when you're speaking about body positivity, it's like, am I speaking to a void? Like, is this gonna make any difference on society? Of course it makes a difference with the people following you, but it's like, how can you do more when it's such a big issue, so much bigger than you know?
Yeah, and you, look, you're one person.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have had more impact in your life than you will ever know.
Oh,
and you have actually changed the world.
I feel like I'm doing nothing. Do you know, that's so funny. Like,
okay, this is a therapy issue.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, you know, I feel like I don't fully absorb what I've done. Like, I feel like, oh, I've not done anything.
You will one day.
Yeah.
So if we go all the way back to little 6-year-old Nikki, and maybe like that moment that she was in the bathroom with a flannel and she was so scared, right?
Yeah.
What would you want to say to her?
I firstly would want to give her a big hug, because she has no idea what's in store for her in the hard ways. You know, I think also, like, when I press record on my camera, I was doing it for me, like no other reason, but I didn't realise it was so much bigger than me. And, you know, it's with me speaking at the UN or the advocacy ideal, whatever it is, like, though this has happened to me, and I will always be like, why me? This is bigger than me. And like, I never believed in everything happens for a reason, but I believe that maybe I've gone through this to share things with the world and my story. And so I would just tell her that it's not going to be easy and none of it is fair, but there's only one of you and you're magic and you have things to share that no one else can. You will get annoyed with the world, and that's okay, and you will not understand why everything's happened to you, but at the same time you have a power, and that superpower is for you to share with the world.
I want to give her a hug as well.
I know, me too. When I was watching back those old family videos the other day, I was really emotional, like, about it. Like, I thought I'd be like, oh, but it was really like, oh, this was me before. Like, I really wanted to give that girl a hug, because she knew nothing about what was about to change.
I'm so thankful for you. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here and having this chat with me.
Thank you for having me. No, genuinely, like, every time I do something like this, it literally feels like therapy. Why pay for therapy when you can just do something like this?
Girl, come talk to me anytime.
Honestly, no, I love you. You're amazing. And thank you so much for having me. This has been, very cathartic. Like, I feel lighter after this, you know?
Go give some love to your body.
I will.
Do something self-care.
I will, definitely.
Appreciate you.
Love you. Appreciate you.